If you have looked out the window or glanced at a newspaper in the last couple of years, you will have noticed the impending danger facing the world and civilization. Now, you may be wondering what brilliant decisions the world's leaders made to put all of us unsuspecting citizens in such a terrible place. Look back 35 years to the beginning of the 90s. The world is comparatively stable. Governments with self-respect and even world leaders who cared about things other than lining their pockets. But today, oh boy, do we see something else. Having the requirements for what it takes to lead the world have slipped greatly. Narrowing down the list of terrible decisions that are bringing our world to an inevitable end is some task. But we have tried. Tell us what you think in the comments. Are we right? What have we missed? Number 1 on our list: crazy leaders. A beautiful way to destroy the world is to allow someone to take control of a country with a huge economy and huge military might and surround them with equally low-educated yes-men. Now, who better to start with? Everyone's favorite ex-president Donald Trump. Wow, a real genius when it comes to making the world an unstable and scary place. Trump's erratic approach to foreign policy has stoked tensions and instability, exemplified by his unilateral withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, which not only alienated key allies, but also heightened the risk of nuclear proliferation in the volatile Middle East. Additionally, his administration's trade wars with China and other nations have triggered economic turbulence worldwide, disrupting supply chains, escalating tariffs, and jeopardizing the global economy. Amidst these challenges, Trump's divisive rhetoric and polarizing policies have strained diplomatic relations, sowed mistrust, and eroded America's standing on the world stage, leaving a legacy of uncertainty and apprehension for future generations to grapple with. Right then, enough about Trump. I'm sure he will pop up again. On to another leader, Vladimir Putin, a world destroyer Trump could only wish to emulate. We've had 25 years of Putin, and he has always been a threat to world peace, but over the last few years, he has really upped his game. Since the invasion of Ukraine, which he believes is Russian land, much like the current crusade by Israel into Palestine, times have gotten much trickier. Tensions between Western powers and Putin and his allies have skyrocketed. We haven't quite reached Cuban Missile levels, but I can smell the aromas of nuclear war in the air. Moreover, his government's alleged interference in foreign elections and cyber attacks targeting democratic institutions have raised alarms about the erosion of global norms and the integrity of democratic processes. As Putin continues to consolidate power at home and assert Russia's influence abroad, the repercussions of his authoritarian governance reverberate across continents, posing enduring challenges to the pursuit of peace, stability, and democracy worldwide. Two great examples of terrible world leaders there. But it would not be fair to conclude this section without mentioning the Chinese government. They have a very impressive growing economy, which you could say is now ahead of the West's, and they have power that is somewhat unmeasurable due to their secretive society and government. Now they believe they have overtaken the rest of the world economically. It is time to take it country by country, right? First on the agenda is Taiwan. China's intentions regarding Taiwan have long been a subject of intense scrutiny and concern within the international community. The Chinese government consistently asserts its sovereignty over Taiwan, viewing the island as an integral part of its territory and advocating for eventual reunification, often employing both diplomatic and coercive measures to advance this goal. Beijing's stance on Taiwan is characterized by a mix of economic incentives, military posturing, and political pressure aimed at dissuading Taiwan from pursuing formal independence. However, Taiwan's robust democracy and strong sense of national identity have led to resistance against Beijing's overtures, resulting in a delicate and often tense relationship marked by cross-strait tensions. While China emphasizes peaceful reunification, its military buildup and assertive rhetoric raise concerns about the potential for conflict in the region, underscoring the complex geopolitical dynamics surrounding the Taiwan issue. You may be thinking, what's Taiwan got to do with me? Potentially a hell of a lot. The USA is determined to stop the Chinese takeover and will most likely be prepared to use the military. We don't need to spell out what happens if the Chinese and US militaries clash. Number 2, borders. Cast your mind back to 1277, a beautiful planet with a lack of borders. What are borders really? Imaginary lines based on ethnicity, religion, and culture? I'm sure when they created the first border in Andorra near Spain, they only wanted to protect what was theirs. But now borders seem to be about violence and domination. Let's get tucked into some of the most pivotal border disputes worldwide. The only place to start is Africa. As Western powers like France and England try to cling on to power through economic means, they leave great chasms behind that local governments try to fill. This causes great debate over territory and causes much more unrest in the region. With such large amounts of natural resources up for grabs, billions of dollars are on the line, exacerbating existing socioeconomic inequalities and fueling cycles of violence and instability. Moreover, the post-colonial era has seen a resurgence of nationalist sentiments and struggles for self-determination, as marginalized communities seek to assert their rights and challenge the legitimacy of existing borders. In many cases, the failure of African governments to address grievances and foster inclusive governance exacerbates these tensions, perpetuating cycles of conflict and impeding efforts towards regional cooperation and integration. As Africa grapples with the legacy of colonialism and the complexities of nation building, the resolution of territorial disputes remains a daunting but essential task for fostering peace and prosperity on the continent. Israel has long contested their borders on the international stage. Israel's belief in its historical and biblical ties to the land of Palestine lies at the heart of one of the world's most protracted and contentious conflicts. Central to Israel's claim is the notion of a Jewish homeland dating back thousands of years, with Jerusalem as its spiritual and political capital. The modern state of Israel traces its roots to the Zionist movement of the late 19th century, which sought to establish a Jewish state in the ancestral land of the Jewish people. Following the horrors of the Holocaust, international support for the creation of a Jewish state grew, culminating in the United Nations Partition Plan of 1947, which allocated territory for both Jewish and Arab states. Unfortunately, since that original allocation of land, which, let's be honest, was always going to cause issues, Israel has encroached greatly into Palestinian land. That has been mostly uncontested, due to the lack of monetary capability of Palestine, and also the unwavering support of the U.S. to the Israeli government. This has all led to what is now a terrible moment in history. Thousands of Palestinians lay dead in the street, and it seems that nothing will stop Israel on their march to achieve the total destruction of Palestine. As other foreign powers refuse to interfere, unfortunately, this seems inevitable. Now let's move to number 3 and a different topic, but one that can link almost all of the world's issues. Religious battles. Religion dates back at least 4,000 years with Hinduism. Since then, religion has grown, with a staggering 85% of the world's population claiming to identify with a religion. Doesn't that sound lovely? A world where everyone believes in a greater power that teaches them to love their neighbor and respect others and the planet. Ooh, if only in the 21st century, religion remains a potent force driving conflict and division across the globe, despite aspirations for a more interconnected and harmonious world. From the ongoing sectarian strife in the Middle East to the resurgence of religious nationalism in India, and the persecution of religious minorities in various parts of the world, faith-based tensions continue to shape the geopolitical landscape. Extremist ideologies, often masquerading as religious fervor, fuel violence and sow discord, tearing at the social fabric of communities and nations alike. In an era marked by globalization and technological advancement, the internet serves as a potent tool for the dissemination of extremist propaganda and the radicalization of individuals, further exacerbating religious divides. Europe in the past 10 years has got more and more filled with hatred for those that don't share the typical characteristics of its people. As European governments cause more and more violence and disbursement of people in other continents, the people of Europe revolt in having to share their beloved land with newcomers. For whatever reason, a lot of the people being dispersed come from Muslim countries, and therefore a huge spike in anti-Islam has arisen in Europe. This surge in Islamophobia manifests in various forms, from legislative measures targeting religious attire and practices, to the proliferation of far-right ideologies that demonize Islam as a threat to national identity and security. Recent years have witnessed a surge in anti-Muslim hate crimes, ranging from verbal abuse to physical attacks, underscoring the pervasive nature of this toxic rhetoric. Moreover, the growing influence of populist politicians who capitalize on anti-Islam sentiment to garner support further exacerbates tensions and deepens divisions within European societies. Against the backdrop of increasing cultural diversity and religious pluralism, the rise of Islamophobia poses a profound challenge to the values of tolerance, inclusion, and respect for human rights that lie at the heart of European identity. As Europe grapples with the implications of this troubling trend, the imperative to confront and combat Islamophobia has never been more urgent, lest the continent succumb to the forces of bigotry and intolerance that threaten to undermine its cherished democratic ideals. Now let's head over to number 4 on our list, poking the bear. Something about the childish nature of politicians in the 21st century means they can't avoid provoking their counterparts. I remember throwing a pencil at the back of someone's head and pretending it wasn't me in primary school. Imagine if you swapped the pencil for a huge military exercise involving billions of pounds of weaponry and thousands of soldiers right on the border of one of your greatest military rivals. It doesn't sound quite as risk-free as the prior bit of fun I had in school. Now, just like in school, the poor guy I threw a pencil at doesn't want to look weak, and inevitably, he is going to reply. And just like everyone saw me humiliate him, he is for sure going to make sure everyone sees him retaliate. So he decides to push me over in the playground at lunch. The governing body catches him, in this case, the teacher. Now they punish him, publicly. This creates more hatred within the child for me. As he is punished, I sit back comfy, knowing that I started this mess, but I won't be punished. I hope you followed my point. Let's return to reality. In the Middle East, long-standing rivalries between Iran and Saudi Arabia fuel conflicts across the region, with each side vying for influence and control in a high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. The recent escalation of tensions between Russia and Ukraine further illustrates how historical grievances and territorial disputes can ignite a powder keg of provocation, threatening to engulf the region in conflict. As nations navigate the complexities of an interconnected world fraught with competing interests and shifting alliances, the risk of miscalculation and escalation looms large, underscoring the urgent need for diplomacy, dialogue, and a renewed commitment to fostering peace and stability on the global stage. Number 5. Let's quickly touch on the terrible pandemic that gripped the planet in 2020, and what effect that has had on society and our proximity to inevitable doom. The economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic has reverberated across the globe, exacerbating existing inequalities and fraying the delicate fabric of international relations. As nations grapple with the unprecedented challenges posed by the pandemic, the strain on global supply chains, disruptions to trade, and the collapse of key industries have sent shockwaves through the world economy. In this climate of uncertainty and hardship, tensions between countries have escalated, fueled by competition for vital medical supplies, accusations of hoarding vaccines, and disputes over responsibility for the origins and handling of the virus. The pandemic has laid bare the fragility of the interconnected global economy, exposing vulnerabilities that have been exploited by opportunistic actors seeking to advance their own interests at the expense of others. From the United States and China to Europe and beyond, the blame game and finger pointing have further strained diplomatic relations, hindering efforts towards cooperation and collective action in combating the pandemic. As the world continues to grapple with the far-reaching consequences of COVID-19, the imperative for solidarity, collaboration, and a coordinated global response has never been more urgent, lest the pandemic deepen divisions and sow the seeds of future conflicts on the international stage. I think it's clear in the 21st century money has been king for a long time. So much so that money has taken ownership of some of our most beloved pastimes. Sports, cinema, and even visiting places of natural beauty can cost you a day's wages. It's a shame this is the reality, but we must get on with it. Let's go deeper into why this is the case. From corporate boardrooms to the corridors of political power, greed and the insatiable hunger for money have permeated every aspect of modern society, reshaping economies, exacerbating inequalities, and fueling a culture of rampant consumerism. The unchecked pursuit of financial gain has led to the exploitation of natural resources, the degradation of the environment, and the commodification of human labor, as profit margins take precedence over ethical considerations and the well-being of communities. In this era of hypercapitalism, wealth is concentrated in the hands of a privileged few, while millions languish in poverty and deprivation, underscoring the inherent injustices of a system driven by greed and inequality. As the gap between the haves and the have-nots widens, the corrosive influence of money in politics further erodes democratic principles and undermines the voice of ordinary citizens, as vested interests wield their economic power to shape policy and influence decision-making. As we confront the myriad of challenges facing our planet, from climate change to social injustice, the pervasive influence of greed and money looms large, casting a shadow over the prospects for a more equitable and sustainable future. As competition for dwindling resources intensifies and economic disparities deepen, the stage is set for conflict, as nations vie for strategic advantage and access to vital commodities. Indeed, history has shown that wars have often been fought over resources such as oil, water, and land, as competing interests clash in a desperate struggle for survival. As the forces of greed and money continue to shape the destiny of our planet, the specter of war looms ever larger on the horizon, underscoring the urgent need for a fundamental reevaluation of our values and priorities in pursuit of a more just, equitable, and sustainable future. We've made it to the end of this formidable list. I truly hope that with these ingredients you will be able to go away and cause your own World War III. If we have missed out any tips and tricks, please feel free to drop a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe, we know you don't want to miss the next video. See you next time for more political and economic stories.